We are what? We are who? We are what? Vibrant. We are who? 50 plus. Hi, welcome to Gray Lives on the Rise. I am your host, Professor Jamila Franklin, and we are coming to you from Oyende Enterprises, being sponsored by Jamila Sense, which is our product line of aromatherapy products that helps heal the mind, body, and soul. And we are bringing to you ALOHA's rebirthing program, as well as Jamila Sense, and a host of wonderful programs that will help heal your body, heal your soul, and heal your mind. 50 plus people, we are here to stay. Gray Lives on the Rise. We are what? We are who? We are vibrant, and we are here to stay. Join us for our wonderful episodes. Thank you, and continue to look for our episodes weekly, being brought to you again from Oyende Enterprises and Jamila Sense. See you soon. Greetings, everyone. How are you? This is Professor Jamila again with Great Lives on the Rise. And we have the handsome Mr. Dan Mykins. Welcome, Dan. To read some information about Dan, he's just so versatile and so talented. Dan Mykins is a spiritual life coach who shifted from being a counselor to a coach. He coaches the people he calls surfers to learn how to ride the waves of life in a way that is different from the original teaching of putting others before self. His approach is one that invites the surfers to make changes in the way they identify themselves in the world. He knows that surviving isn't enough and that thriving is the path to healing. He teaches the surfers the other 3 R's that have been left out for thriving in life. Number 1, relationship with self first. And that's so important. People tend to put other people before them. You should never do that. You should always put yourself first. And then with others. Number 2, resiliency. And number 3, relaxation. He has been honored by his peers by having a mural painted on the wall of him where he was a high school counselor. The mural portrays him modeling the way he approaches life and living with his radical approach of celebrating Mondays with his ALOHA Monday Hawaiian shirts. He holds a bachelor's degree in anthropology and a master's degree in counseling, and he is also a certified spiritual life coach. He enjoys incorporating fun, like he said, fueling up now into his life by flying kites and blowing bubbles. He brings the same playful approach to his coaching and adds humor to his healing. He is both zany and zen. He enjoys taking words like sway and expanding their meaning. He plays with the word and then allows different words to come into his awareness to give the word new meaning. Like sway means sending waves across the universe. He isn't held by boundaries except the ones he chooses to be held by, with the exception of gravity, of course, until he learns how to levitate, which probably isn't too far for him.
I haven't gotten that one yet.
Yeah, it's not too far away from him. His goals with his clients or surfers: number 1, empower the surfer to recognize the importance of loving themselves first in their lives, to be able to operate from a place of abundant love. Number 2, encourage the surfer to be fearless in their pursuit of whatever they desire for their purpose and meaning in life. And number 3, encourage the surfer to remain childlike and to give themselves permission to swing and sway. And his quotes are, laughter is the best medicine, which is so true. Number 2, everything happens for a reason. And we have a choice how we want to interpret the event and how we want to respond to it, which is true. Number 3, how soon is now, which is an acronym for him, noticing one's worth. And number 4, energy flows where attention goes. And that is so, so accurate. And Dan, I would like for you to just give our listening audience some information about who you are. And I'm going to step away for 1 second because I have to close the door. So you can just begin and I'll be back in 1 second.
Okay, well, thank you. You know, I was listening to what you were saying, Jamila, about consciousness, and I'm all in because I was a professor at a college and I designed a course called Mental Health, Mind, Body, Spirit Connection. And I remember when I first sat down and I attempted to write the curriculum that it didn't go very well. And so I made a choice to go to a place where I feel very connected in my spiritual awareness. And so I went to a local waterfall and I just sat there. And you know what I did? I just let go of my need to create the curriculum. And by letting that go, the curriculum just appeared. It just came to me.
When you surrendered.
And there, what a beautiful word. I surrendered. And that's so important, isn't it? Because
it is.
When we try to have control over our lives, how does that work? It doesn't work very well. When we let go, then we allow things to enter and to flow. So it's amazing, you know, when you talked about your story and how you came up with this concept, this more than concept, excuse me, this movement, call to action. And so I say aloha, and aloha means yes, hello. It's also a call to action. It means awareness, love, optimism, humor, action, right? So you have 2 A's that bookmark it. And the first one, of course, is awareness, that self-awareness, how important that is. And I don't think we were taught in our educational years how important it is to be aware of ourselves. Now, I know that's starting to change, and wonderfully, because of mindfulness and meditation now that's happening in schools. And, you know, I was one of the first people to introduce that in my school district many years ago. And I was so glad that this district was receptive to what I was offering them. Because how often do we really get invited? That's one of the words I love to use. I am inviting you, right? It's an invitation. It's not a command. It's not something that you have to do. It's an invitation. And then we accept the invitation or we don't. And it's an invitation to have more self-awareness. Now, one of the reasons I'm called Dan the Radical Healing Man is because my approach does seem radical when I use the word selfish, because so many of us think selfish is a bad word. And I don't believe that's the case. I believe that selfish is in many ways like when the airline attendant says to the passengers on the plane, put the mask over your face first, right? Give yourself the oxygen that you need so that you can then go out and help others.
Exactly. I agree. Yeah. That's so important. And that's an analogy that I use a lot too, Dan. I tell people, when you're on the plane, even if you have your infant next to you, they tell you to put the mask on you, not on the infant, because if you perish, the infant can't save you. It can't get off the plane for itself. Anyway, so when people are like, oh yeah, I said, so because we've been taught to deal with self first is, like you said, selfish, which is not a positive word, which I think is very, very positive, because I tell people, for me, it's the creator of the universe first, then me, and everyone else has to take a ticket and stand in line. And women especially have been have felt guilty in taking that kind of attitude, because they're the nurturers. They're supposed to take care of everyone else and be selfless, which doesn't make sense. But I think that's so true.
Well, that goes with the sacrifice, right? That we're taught.
Yes. Yes.
is to
Yes.
sacrifice ourselves for others. And
Yes.
so when I talk about awareness, it's so important to develop a sense of awareness of who I am. And when I
Right.
taught at the college level, I asked the students to answer a question that was maybe the most challenging question they ever had to answer, because the question was, who am I? Now, there's an additional piece to this. They had to answer the question without bringing others into their answer. So, in other words, they couldn't say brother or sister or father or mother or friend. And I said to them, I want you to answer it in a way that allows you to find out more about yourself without bringing others into your answer. And they were looking at me like, what? What kind of question is this?
It's revolutionary. Yeah. Yeah.
And
People
at
are
the end
taught
of the
to
semester,
find themselves by
at the end of the
intelligence.
semester,
Mm-hmm.
they got what I was saying. Not
Yeah.
all of them, though. Some of them still wanted to stick with the traditional teachings, right? That how I see myself is really more in relationship to others and how they define me rather than how I define myself.
Right.
And so I did this exercise with myself again very recently. In fact, when you invited me to be on this podcast, I said, you know what? I want to explore this again for me now, because maybe my answer will be different. And to a certain extent, it's not, because one of the things that I see about myself, and this is radical again, is I focus more on my divinity rather than my humanity.
Oh, I love that. Repeat that. I love that.
I focus more on my divinity rather than my humanity. I'm not denying my humanity. Of course I'm human. I bleed, right?
Exactly.
I experience all the things that humans experience. What I'm talking about, though, is a shift or a pivot in saying, have you ever heard this one? I'm a human being on a spiritual journey. I'm a spiritual being on a human journey.
Oh,
And
yeah.
there are all kinds of responses that a person can give to that, right?
Yeah.
And I simply say, I am a divine being. And in my divinity, my humanity is included in that. It's not excluding my humanity. It's including it as part of it. And what I also say is, I am perfectly imperfect. And that is my divinity.
Yeah. I love that. I've never heard it explained like that. I love that.
And for me, that just opens things up all the more, right? The possibilities now are endless. Because once I can embrace my divinity, I am free. Now, you're right. I'm not levitating yet. So I levitate, though, not in my human form. I levitate in my spiritual form.
Yeah.
So even though my human form isn't levitating at this time, spiritually, I'm levitating right now with you, because I am allowing myself to express myself with you in a way that is so open, and I'm going to use another word now, vulnerable, right? That's another thing. We are all taught that vulnerability is a weakness.
Oh, yeah. Especially
And
for
I
men.
say it's my greatest strength.
Yeah.
Like right now, I'm being raw with you. Maybe I'm being vulnerable. Maybe people are watching this and say, what is that goofball doing? What is he all about? And that's okay.
Yeah.
Because I know that I am being authentic and genuine in this moment with you. And I know that others. So here's the other thing I've learned about myself. Now, this is a recent learning. And that is, I am what you call a projector. Okay. And so I learned this through the day and time that I was born, and somebody was teaching me this stuff. And have you ever been taught something and you sort of already knew it.
Yeah.
I call it a knowing, right? There's this knowing.
Yeah.
So I didn't know it on one level, and yet when they told me it, I said, yeah, that is true. That is who I am. And what a projector is able to see things about others
Mm-hmm.
and help them find their own light or their own path.
Mm.
Now,
Okay.
I am only as effective, though, as those who are willing to receive and be open to what I have to offer as a coach.
Right.
And so that's why the relationship is so important, because if someone I'm coaching isn't really open to receiving,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm not really going to be all that effective with the person.
That's true.
And this is
Yeah.
really important when it comes to coaching, is that we can't coach everybody. And I always
Yeah.
tell people, are you in a state of readiness for coaching?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're not, don't waste your money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what
And
I
some
say to
people may
people,
think that they are. They may think that they are. But then when the process starts, they see that they're not.
so I have this other acronym, I call it radical, okay? And
Uh-huh.
R stands for readiness. So anyone I coach has to be in a state of readiness. And I
Mm-hmm.
can't determine that for the person, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
so when we look at your movement that you are promoting and not just promoting, acting upon and modeling, and isn't that wonderful? Then you
Thank you.
have to be more than just ready. You have to be willing and taking action.
Yes.
And so after we're acknowledging I'm in a state of readiness, am I acknowledging all the things that I need to do, that I'm willing to do to make change?
Mm-hmm.
And so in this time of life, you know, that we're talking about now, and some people think 60 now is old, okay? Because they're defining it as old. They're calling it the new old. I just read that. It's the new
Oh,
old
really?
or the young old. And I say it's only old if you believe it's old, right?
Exactly.
Now,
And
none
but
of us are getting younger.
yeah.
None of us are getting any younger. And so
Mm-hmm.
it is a call to action now. And I'll go back to what I said, you know, when you talked about and introduced me, now means noticing one's worthiness.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things I talk about in coaching all the time is, what are we taught? We are taught that we deserve things or we don't deserve things, right? Based on our choices or our actions. Do we get a punishment? Do we get a reward? And all of that. And so my style of coaching is, it's not about deserving it. You're worthy in your divinity of having it. And when
Mm.
can you have it? Now. And how can you have it? In a way that you are worthy of it, noticing one's worthiness. So go
Yeah.
back to the awareness thing, right? The
Mm-hmm.
awareness is of my divinity, that I am worthy of having change now, not because I deserve it or I've earned it. Isn't that
Mm-hmm.
beautiful that we
Mm-hmm.
remove that from the deserving and undeserving to the
Oh, yeah.
worthiness of having it in my divinity?
Yeah. 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 And a lot of people are based on their religious beliefs, feel like they are a worthless sinner, that
Mhm.
they don't deserve. So it's all couched in different ways in religious belief systems, in on the job. After you get to be beyond 50, you're not worthy of being an employee here. We're going to help you get to the greener pasture. We're going to basically retire you. And so that's in workplace, then in religion, and then in families too, about feeling worthy. If you're no longer able to contribute because you've gotten older in the family structure, they then tend to dismiss you and push you to the side and say that you don't really have any importance. Even it's from you that these children and grandchildren came from. But now they're in a position of some authority and they tend to mistreat. because they
Well,
feel
you
they're
said
already
something
worthy.
that I wanted to touch upon, and that is the whole notion of we reach a certain age and we're retired. I don't like the word retirement. I mean, some people do, and they celebrate it and embrace it because, they've been on the gerbil wheel for 30 plus years and they want to get off. They're tired.
Right,
They
right.
don't want to be on it. So they look at retirement in a positive way, and I don't take issue with that. At the end of my 30-year career as a school counselor, I'm still, you talked about vitality, right? I still had a lot of energy and a lot of zaniness, and I didn't want to retire. And so at my own party, at the conclusion of my 30-year career, I did not call it a retirement party. I called it a shift party, that I am shifting.
I like that.
And, so when people came into the door at my party, I invited the people who greeted them to say, "Welcome to Dan's shift party, where everyone gets laid." Okay.
Mhm.
And this is the lay I'm talking about. All right. And what I'm saying is that I coach with a lay, not a whistle,
Mhm.
because a whistle is like barking at people and telling them to do this and do that, and that's what we're all kind of sick and tired of, right? We've been barked at, we've been told we got to do this, we got to do that. We're at an age now where we no longer have to do that.
Mhm.
Isn't that a beautiful time of life, where
Yes,
we are
yes.
now in a place of freedom to make our own choices about
Yeah,
how we want to live?
yeah, yeah.
Unless we still want to be, and there's this word that I often use in coaching, unless we still want to be controlled.
Mm-hmm.
And some people need that kind of structure. They need that kind of governance, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
they're afraid to operate on their own. And so that's why I talk about fearlessness, right? You got to be fearless. If
Yeah.
you want to go out there and you want to make your life different, if you want to be different, then you have to do it fearlessly.
Mm-hmm. In a massive way. And I think what you're doing then in terms of your programs and in terms of your clients, you're having them remember who they are and not to see themselves as second-class citizens because of whatever, because of age, because of physical impairment, whatever it is, but to see themselves as a whole person. And by your coaching and having them come to that on their own after a couple of sessions, I think is really, really helpful. Because, we're seeing people who are committing suicide. That rate has really increased. So we need more programs to keep people in.
Well, I think what many of us do is we live life in fear, whether we know it or not. And so if I had my prop, and I don't have it, we all wear pith helmets, okay? And these pith helmets are to protect us. And when I say fearlessness, it means take off the pith helmet and let what I call the coconuts hit you on the head in your
Yeah,
consciousness, right? So
yeah,
I don't know about you, but I know that I have many coconut moments when I'm willing to take off that pith helmet and be fearless. And
mm-hmm.
a coconut moment in many ways is like an aha moment, right? I call
Mm-hmm.
it an aloha moment. It's a moment of awakening. And how many more things do we have to go through to be awakened? People are waiting for the outside source to awaken them
No,
instead
well,
of seizing the moment, right? Seizing the
yeah.
moment of now and saying, it's time for me to do this.
Yeah. Well, I think the pandemic was an excellent example
Mm-hmm.
of taking people out of the busyness of the world. It wasn't just in one country, it was worldwide. To have people really sit down and face their inner child and inner conflict. And they couldn't wait to get back out in the streets. They didn't understand that the the universe was saying everybody needs a child and see what's really going on here and go within because everything is within. most people have a challenging time going within. They don't
Mhm.
feel comfortable with themselves, so they're always out doing something, going to parties or doing something to keep the focus off them. But
Well, you're
yeah,
talking about distraction. We're
yeah,
the masters at distracting ourselves from going
yeah,
within
yeah, because
because
it's
we're
all,
afraid.
yeah,
And that's sad that we're
yeah,
afraid of what we might learn, of what we might
yeah,
find out about ourselves. And that
yeah,
goes back to the teachings again. And so, that's why it's so important that I use this radical approach, because it so much goes against teachings that we've been given, not because the
mhm,
people who taught us are bad. That's not what we're saying.
right,
It's just
right,
that for whatever reason, they only taught us what they were given, right? So they
right,
can only give what they were given. And so what
yeah,
I say is, I believe that all of us know, I used that word earlier, we all have a knowing of ourselves. And
mhm,
for whatever reason, many of us are afraid. And so that's where that fearlessness comes in again, where I have to be vulnerable and raw with myself. And,
yeah,
Pima Chodron always talks about lean into our suffering, not away
yeah.
from it.
Yeah, but that's so uncomfortable
It
for
is.
people in society, particularly for men, because they're told that you don't show your vulnerabilities. You have to tough it up, stick your chest out, and pretend like everything is okay. While insurance companies know that it's not okay, and they write higher policies on men than they do women, because they know that men are going to usually check out before women. And you can change that, like what you were saying, Dan. You can change that worldview. It can be changed. And in doing so, your whole world would change.
Well, there you go. I mean, it's a shift or a pivot. Somebody told me that. Oh, I think it was my barber actually the other day. Maybe when he was pivoting my chair and cutting my hair off, and he talked about pivoting, and so we learn to make pivots in our lives, and it's important that we recognize that the pivots are based on our life choices
Yeah,
that
yeah,
we want to make, not because others want us to make them, because we
yeah,
want to make them ourselves. So much of what I do in my coaching is taking and telling people that it's important to stop living outside in. So many of us,
hmm,
right? Even in our country today, and I don't want to get too political, that people are looking for some outside source to
yes,
transform them, right? To
yes,
change them. I'm not going to get into slogans and all that because I don't want to go there. My whole thing is change from the inside out.
exactly.
Be the change from within that you
Hmm,
so want to see from the outside. And then
hmm,
as you're doing, model it. Model
hmm.
it. I mean, that's the greatest form of teaching, isn't it?
It
And
is.
so that's a beautiful thing. At this age that we are now, you know what? We get so many things. I call them sort of like freebies, right? We get to speak now with less of a filter, and people don't look
Yes.
at us so strangely. Oh, that person's just old, he's losing it or something. So, and what a beautiful thing that is to be able to speak without a filter. Just as like you said, go back to childlike, right? So I was
Mm,
with my granddaughter. Her name is Mavy Wavy Gravy. And she's standing up at a restaurant the other night, and she's just staring out at the people at the other, and the other
mhm,
booth.
mhm.
Who gets to do that? Only her, right?
Yeah,
Anyone
yeah.
else who did that would be looked upon in a negative manner. And
That's
yet
a
they
stalker.
smiling right back at her.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah,
so that's where
it's
that childlike comes into play, right? It's that
mm,
willingness to put ourselves out there in a way that, okay, maybe we do risk being rejected. And she
mhm,
didn't worry about that at all. She had no
mhm,
concerns about that because she
mhm.
was just doing what she wanted to do. And so this is a time of life where we need to start seizing the opportunities and taking advantage of our age.
Yeah, yeah. And this is a golden time. That's the reason why I said we don't use the words old or seniors or elderly, because this is a golden moment in your life. And the children are out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have paid off their homes or close to paying off their homes. And most now are in very good health. So this is the time to self-actualize. What is it that you put on the shelf that you didn't give yourself permission to follow through on? Now is the time. And having someone like you, Dan, I think is amazing because you can help coach them along the process so that they don't get stuck. Because sometimes people are like, well, this happened 10 years ago, and maybe I should still be doing that. And where's Mary? They get stuck with all of the things that are not important. Whereas you, as a coach, would keep them on track to say, okay, yeah, that's not the question. The larger question is, who are you, independently of these titles and these roles? You're taking care of the me first. Yeah.
Well, that's where we begin, right? In the whole idea of making that shift or pivot to recognizing how important I am, not to the exclusion of others. See, and that's
Exactly.
part of the fear too, now that we have this word narcissism in there, right? I
Oh,
mean, to me, narcissism is probably the most unhealthy and dangerous word now that's been introduced to mental health, because now everyone's fearful of being labeled it. And I say, embrace who I am. It's
oh, yeah.
okay to be selfish, not to the exclusion of others, to the inclusion of others on my
Right.
terms. On my
Right.
terms.
Right. Right. Setting boundaries. Right. Oh.
It's kind of like being a grandparent, right? Because being a grandparent, and I'm a grandparent soon to 3. As a grandparent, I can say yes, I can say no. It's okay to say both. I don't have to, I'm not obligated, and that's an important word right there, right? I'm not obligated to do anything. If I do something, I do it because I want to do it. Isn't that freeing? I don't have to do it. And to
Very
me,
free.
that's the most freeing thing of all. So now when I'm with my grandchildren, I want to be with them. I want to play with them. I want to have fun with them.
Yeah.
Not because I have to be doing it.
Right.
What if
Taking
I
the
want to be doing something else? Isn't that okay
yeah.
too?
Have you?
Absolutely. I could be doing something
Take
else
it.
if I want to. So
Yeah.
it's doing more of the things that I want to do over the things that I felt I needed to do when I was raising a family and I'm a caretaker and providing money and all kinds of support for the family structure. And now, like you said, empty nest. I don't have that anymore. So, it goes back to once again, so what more excuses? Wayne Dyer always talked about excuses be gone, right? What other excuses do I want to put in place there that prevent me from self-actualizing?
Well, some excuses people would use is, with this group, yeah, I could have, would have, should have done it years ago. Now I'm too, as they would say, old to do it. And Grandma Moses, I think, started painting when she was in her late 80s. Mom's Mabley, Mom's Mabley, I think that's her name. The Black female comedian, I think, started in her 60s or in her 70s. There are a lot of people who come to age later on in life.
Louise Hay. Look at Louise Hay.
Yeah, yeah, she was
What a
like in her,
wonderful woman. And
yeah,
she awakened later, at
she
least
did.
at least outwardly to the world. I'm not saying inwardly. I'm sure inwardly she was awakened well before that, in terms
Yeah.
of when she came out to the world and shared all of her gifts. And yeah, so this is a time of like a renaissance for us, isn't it? And that's what you're talking about. This is a movement, a renaissance movement, to recognize we have so much opportunity here now in our lives because of the circumstances that we're in,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and the way that we have freedoms like we haven't previously held or remembered since we were that small child, when we were
right,
not when we were not so burdened with worry and concern over everything. And
right.
so this, to me, that's why you said it earlier in my introduction. How soon is now? Well, now all we ever have is the present moment. That's all we really
Exactly.
ever have, right? The past is gone. The future hasn't arrived yet. And so the beauty is If I miss the last moment of now, the other one's already here.
Mm-hmm.
And so no more excuses, no more reasons why I can't do something that I've been saying I always wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really important. But sometimes people find difficulty in owning that part of who they are. It's just like, okay, if someone says, well, I've always desired to be a writer, an author, but I couldn't because I had to be pragmatic. When I was in college, my parents told me to get a major and a job that was going to pay my bills and provide me with the type of livelihood that I deserve. So I put this is hypothetical, it's not me. I put my dreams on hold because of that. My real dream was something different than what I was pursuing in college. So you put your dream on hold and then get married, raise your children, and then it's your time again. So what excuse would you have? Well, now, yeah, I have the time, but I don't have the focus, or yeah, I have the time, but I don't have the youth on my side. So it's always some kind of excuse
There you go.
if we desire to harbor on that. And the thing is for us to say, okay, let me just deal with what the real issue is. It's not about a dream deferred. It's about some insecurity within me. What is it? What have I been told? Like you said earlier, I liked it about self-worth. You'll never be a good writer, or that's the reason why you need to go to school for engineering, because writing is not your forte. You need to just give up on that. So even though the people may not be present, the little tape is still playing in the back of the head about worthiness. So the key thing is worthiness, like you had mentioned before. And while people won't pursue their dreams when they have the time now, the resources and everything else, they just don't feel worthy, that they will be good enough to make their dreams come into a reality, so that they don't pursue it.
Well, it's the deserving and undeserving that hinder us. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that's from the past.
Oh, yeah.
That's only from the past. And
Yeah,
so
that's
when
true.
we can transform into the worthiness, it's not based any longer on the past, what we did or didn't do. Whatever we did or didn't do, kind of like the whole idea of regret, right? I love that regret isn't what I did do. Regret is what I didn't do.
Ah.
And that's one of my quotes is that I've really been living more recently in my life, right? That, okay, I can have regret about things that I've done in my past. I can't undo them. So
Right.
that's where this is the idea of compassion with Ho'oponopono, self-compassion. So if there are things from my past that are preventing me from moving forward, then it's important that I give myself compassion. Now, why I say that is how often, once again, are we looking from an outside-in source for forgiveness, right? From someone else, instead of saying, wait, inside out, I give myself compassion. What a beautiful, freeing thing that is, right? I am sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. And by saying these words to ourselves, we lift ourselves up. We free ourselves from our past. We are no longer bounded to it.
Yeah.
And that's how we levitate. That's how we levitate ourselves spiritually.
I love it. It doesn't have that hold on you. I had this vision, and I didn't come up with it. I had seen it somewhere or heard it. We tend to put ourselves in jail, close the door, and throw away the key. We imprison ourselves in so many different ways. And I think what you're saying makes so much sense. It is so, and there are three groups that I definitely desire to hear your wonderful message, Dan. People who are 50 plus, because the stereotypes, well, we're breaking free of those stereotypes. And Great Lives on the Rise is a very instrumental group that's helping dissolve that. And then the people who put themselves in a group are, I mean, it's self-imprisonment, are people who have been told that they weren't good enough in their youth, or if a parent is divorced from the other parent, you're just like your dad, you're just like your mom, or the grandparent who tells them. So therefore, you can't break out of that because they've already put you in this box that you have to remain in. And then traditionally, women have been put in boxes about what they can and could not do in terms of professions. Like 60 years ago or 70 years ago, some women, not all, but some would go to college to find a husband because she knew that if she became a doctor or lawyer or something like that, which were in those days defined as male positions, she would not find a mate. So she stopped what she wanted to do, desired to do, to fit in that stereotype. And so she put herself in a self-contained prison. So those are three different groups where people are in these constricted spaces that need to free themselves. And I think this is wonderful. So when you were teaching at the college level, what did you teach? Or
So I'll tell you a brief story about how it came about. I was a bouncer in my early 40s, and I was at a bar, and I was outside, and this is when smoking was still allowed. And so I'm standing as far away as I can. It's not that I don't like the smoker, I don't like the smoke. So I'm standing as far away as I can from the smoke. And this woman, she comes up to me and she wraps her arms around me like I'm a pole. And she looks up at me and she says, "What are you doing here, honey?" And I knew, there's that knowing again. I knew that she wasn't talking about what am I doing there at that bar. She meant, what are you doing here in the universe? What are you here for? What is your purpose and meaning? And when she said that to me, and that's why I'm all in for spiritual guides that show up for us. She was one of those spiritual guides that I've experienced, and I've had several in my life. And she gave me that coconut moment, she gave me that coconut moment that boinked me right on the head. And I went home and I wrote a letter to several local colleges. And within 2 weeks, I got several responses. And I walked into this college at SUNY Brockport. And how many times did this happen? They offered me the position right then and there. And it was to teach a course called mental health. Now, I observed several teachers who were teaching the course. And I thought, after I observed them, this isn't mental health, this is mental illness. And so that's when I started what I was talking to you about earlier, started to create my own curriculum with, of course, the help of the universe. And I transformed the entire course to mental health, mind, body, spirit connection.
Whoa. Powerful.
And I knew that this is the missing piece. If there's a missing piece in the puzzle, right, to this whole idea of who am I, it's the divinity. And in our divinity, that's where we're free to have this forgiveness and compassion for ourselves, even though others don't want to give it to me. Well, of course they don't want to give it to me because they want to control me. And so I am free now in my divinity to give myself whatever I want to give myself, even if others don't approve.
Wow. That's wonderful. That's
the message that I wanted to give to college students to get at a younger age than when I had more awareness of it.
Wow. And epiphany moments come at any point in time. Like you said, you were a bouncer in this bar.
Yeah.
And this woman comes up to you, but you had the self-awareness to know that she wasn't talking about why are you in the bar. She was asking you a metaphysical question.
That's right.
That you felt within your soul, and you responded by saying, "Hey, I'm out."
Yeah. I was out. Yeah. That was
Yeah,
it.
yeah. That is so wonderful.
And
That
that
is
goes
so,
back to what I was saying though earlier. It's so important that we have experiences, right? Because we
yeah,
never know where those experiences are going to lead us. And
that's
so be
true.
fearless again about it. Even if it seems like, well, this doesn't seem to make sense.
Yeah,
See, it's not about logic. See, there
yeah,
you go. It's suspending all these things that we've been taught about
yeah.
logic and the rules and all of that stuff. Because with the universe, those things don't apply.
That's true. No,
And
that's
so
true.
that's where trust comes into
Yeah,
play, right? That
yeah,
we trust ourselves and that the universe is always in agreement with us.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
that we're not in agreement with the
Yes,
universe.
that is so true. The universe always says yes to the highest version. And when we play small, like you were saying before, if we play small, then you get the little nudge, because I've played small sometimes in the past. I don't do that anymore. We give you that little nudge, like, okay, Dan, okay, Jamila, you're thinking limited, you're thinking too small. And then if it doesn't manifest, it's because you're thinking too small.
Mhm.
So that's when I have come to realize this didn't happen like I thought. It's because the creator was saying, I needed you to think outside of the box. And I love the acronyms that you give, like SWAY and
Yeah.
fun and aloha. It's just fun energy. Fun
That's
energy.
exactly what it is. It's fun. And I don't do it sitting and writing it at a desk. It just
Mhm.
comes in when I just allow myself, right, to be in that space of receiving it. Because whenever I
Mhm.
try to force it, whenever I try to sit down and force something in that manner, it doesn't work. It just
That's
doesn't
true.
work for me.
It
Now,
doesn't.
I can manifest. And so I learned recently there's two ways of manifesting things, right? You can set up the environment and you can manifest. So that's why like I have 50 Hawaiian shirts and those are, partly a way of manifesting what I want in my life in terms of how I want to live it and free of uniforms and shirts and ties, which I was bound to for many years. And
Yeah.
I broke free of that. And
Mhm.
and then there's another form of manifestation that I recently learned about, and it goes back to once again, I'm worthy of having it.
Yes, yes,
I don't
yeah,
have to necessarily create the environment. I'm worthy of receiving it.
yes, yes. And for it being magnetized to you, people think they have to go out and get everything. I'm doing something recently with myself, getting still and meditating. And I'm saying that I decided to have it come to me. That's one of the big things that Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about. And I'm seeing that happen for me. You don't have to get out there. Once, what Dan is saying is so true. Once you find out that you're worthy, and once you determine that what you desire you can have, all you have to do is just sit still and surrender to that, and it will magnetize to you. So
And
Dan,
that in itself is an action. So action, once again, we're taught that action is jumping and, Nike and that whole idea of action. Action can be an inward action that maybe even
yes,
others don't observe in that moment, right? And yet I'm acting inwardly. And then when I model it, others are going to see it. They're going to know it. They're going to
yes,
know that, hey, this guy, this lady, this person is taking action.
yes, and it is an inward process. And for the remaining 6 or 7 minutes, first of all, I would like for people to get your contact information. How can they get in touch with you?
Well, you know what? It's really easy because I just use my name, DanMykin. So it's like my kin and then an S, danmykins.com.
Okay, it's pretty simple. Yeah, it's pretty simple. So now, what would you like the audience to know? What parting message would you like to
Well,
leave with?
I just like to close by going back to something that you said. And so many of us are taught that we're not enough, right?
Yes.
And the truth is we are more than enough. We're all that in a bag of chips. And so I
Yes.
remember a woman, and I think she used it in an inaugural address. Our greatest fear isn't that we're not enough, it's that we're all powerful. That's
Very
really our
important.
greater fear, is that
Yeah,
I am all powerful. And
yes,
go back to what we were saying earlier, recognize the power within me,
yeah,
and be fearless in the way that you go about it, and use it
yes,
in whatever way you choose to use it, right? This is now a time of life where making choices is so important, because, as I said earlier, none of us are getting any younger. Okay.
yeah,
And so we got to stop making excuses about why we can't do things, whether it's become a writer like you were talking about, or becoming a spiritual life coach, because I
right.
didn't become a spiritual life coach until my mid 50s.
Mm,
And there's never a time when you can't continue to still grow and expand.
that's
It's
true.
still, that opportunity is always there for us. And so
Yeah,
that's the invitation, right? Seize it now.
yeah.
Now.
And don't believe the hype in terms of you're too old for this or to wear whatever, to say whatever. Don't believe the hype. You are as young as your consciousness allows you to be. So the whole thing is as Dan said, take charge of your life and live your life to the fullest. And I loved his title,
Yeah.
Healing Me Before We. Make yourself a priority. Do for you first.
Mm-hmm.
And then as the cup fills up with all the wonderful yumminess of you, then you have the extras to spill over to the we.
Right.
But
That's
fill
right.
it up with that yumminess, yumminess,
It
yumminess.
can't help but overflow, right? That's going to be effortless. That's the effortless part of it. It's just going to
Yes,
overflow from that
yes,
fullness and abundance.
yes, yes, yes. That's it. And Dan, thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you, Jamila, for
I,
inviting me. I so appreciate it. And, I consider this sacred space, as I do with all the people I coach. It's sacred space that we share together. Thank you
yes,
for
yes.
sharing this sacred space with me today.
Oh, thank you for allowing this opportunity to manifest. And for those of you who would like to get in touch with the incomparable, magnificent Mr. Dan Mykins, he gave you his information, Dan Mykins, DANMYKINS.com. Get in touch with him soon, especially the men out there in the audience, because there is support and help for everyone, especially for you. So thank you so much for joining us on this wonderful episode with Mr. Dan Mykins. And know that I love you, everyone. And until next time, stay well, stay healthy, and namaste.
Surf's up. Namaste.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Gray Lives on the Rise, being brought to you by Jamila Sense, which is the product line of Oyende Enterprises. Jamila Sense is a 100% natural aromatherapy line that heals the mind, body, and soul. This episode of Gray Lives on the Rise was intended to uplift you, to inspire you, and to motivate you. Please tell all of your friends, family members, and anyone you know who's 50 plus, who's living a vibrant life and interested in doing more and enjoying life even to its fullest. So thank you, and please subscribe, like, and comment on this video and all our videos. Thank you, and until next time, until our next podcast, namaste and be well.